So America's dad, Bernie Sanders, released his tax returns, and as predicted, nobody cares, and nothing's in them. So there were all these giant conspiracy theories that centrist Democrats were trotting out. Like, what's he hiding? He hasn't released his tax returns yet. And he's like, he said it a bunch of times already. He's like, I don't know if you noticed, but it was Hillary Clinton who got the nomination last time. So I didn't make it to the general. So I didn't, it didn't even cross my mind to release my tax returns. But okay, if you guys want me to release it, even though it's still the primary, I guess since I'm a front runner, why not? Okay. And so he releases his tax returns, and there were all these I wonder what he's hiding. He's got to be hiding something, right? It's got to be something. Bernie Sanders is the poorest member of the Senate, and he's been for 812 years. I believe he's been in office in one position or another since the days of Ulysses S. Grant. So, what do you expect? What do you expect? Do you expect him to have $5 million in income every year or something? Because I got news for you. Usually that's what you're going to see if you look at Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton or the people who were politicians who then decide, I'm going to cash in doing some Wall Street speeches, bitch. Show up once, get $400,000. I mean, think about that, man. You do just 3 speeches, you're already over $1 million in income. So that's what those characters do. Everybody knows that's not Bernie Sanders. Everybody knows he's not looking to cash in. So, and also he is still in office. So, I mean, even if you wanted to, it would be a little bit different when you're in office, but he doesn't want to. And everybody knows that. So why are we pretending? Why? The idea that they ever wanted to float that conspiracy, and then now that the tax returns are released, they're all like, shh. You don't hear any of the people that were, coming up with these conspiracies weighing in on it now because there's nothing to see. So this is in Axios. They say, Senator Bernie Sanders on Monday released 10 years of his tax returns, fulfilling his promise to release the long-awaited disclosure on tax day. The filings show he has made $1.7 million in the 2 years after running for president. Quote, these tax returns show that our family has been fortunate. I am very grateful for that, as I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck, and I know the stress of economic insecurity. That is why I strive every day to ensure every American has the basic necessities of life, including a livable wage, decent housing, health care, and retirement security. I consider paying more in taxes as my income rose to be both an obligation and an investment in our country. I will continue to fight to make our tax system more progressive so that our country has the resources to guarantee the American dream to all people. Okay, so that's the statement he released with it. Now let's get to the specific numbers. Take a look. In 2009, he made $314,000. 2010 was $321,000. 2011, he made $324,000. 2012, $280,000. 2013, $278,000. 2014, $205,000. 2015, $240,000. 2016, this was after he released his best-selling book, obviously, $1 million. 2017, $1.1 million. And then 2018 back to 500, it went down a little bit to $561,000. And again, that's because of his, I guess his book sales were through the roof for 2016 and 2017, and then they petered off a little bit. As it happens with anything. If it's out there for a couple years or whatever, it's just you're not going to get that initial bump where you make a lot of sales. So, this isn't, I think in the mind of centrists, they thought that the Democratic base would see numbers like this and go, oh, goodness gracious me, good sir. What is wrong with you? But nobody reacted like that. And again, Russell Brand had a wonderful quote on this. He said, when I was poor and I spoke about income inequality, they called me bitter. Now that I'm rich and I speak about income inequality, they call me a hypocrite. It's almost like they don't want me to talk about income inequality. And that's the truth. That's the truth. Nobody on the left that I'm familiar with ever said, I'm against anybody being rich, full stop. I'm against anybody having, making a couple $100,000 a year, or even over $1 million a year, full stop. Nobody ever said that. Nobody on the left that I'm familiar with, and I run in these circles, has ever said, I am quite literally anti-rich. Full stop. Like, oh, if you're a surgeon and you work, 50 hours a week or 60 hours a week and you're saving people's lives, well, bro, I think you should top out at $80,000. Nobody said that. So there's this straw man that's erected by the right and by the centrist Democrats of like, we think that this is what you believe, and now we're going to like try to play gotcha with that. But you have to actually listen to us. When we talk about income inequality and wealth inequality, look at the statistics Bernie always brings up. He talks about how, the top 1% has more wealth than the bottom 90%, or it might even be 95% at this point in time. He talks about how the Walton family, 6 people, has more wealth than the bottom 45% of Americans combined. He talks about the Oxfam report, where it found like 6 people or 8 people have more wealth than half the world combined. So 6 people have more than, 3-point-something billion people? So this is the stuff that he talks about. He talks about 78% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. And even when you look at, like, for example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's idea that she floated, she said a 70% top marginal tax rate. What does that mean? It doesn't mean the government comes in, and if you're a middle-class family, it takes 70% of your money. It's not what it means at all. And that's how it's strawman, by the way. She was very clear. She said, for over $10 million in income per year. So not your first $10 million is not taxed at that high rate. Every dollar over $10 million in income per year would be taxed at 70%, and that is before the loopholes and deductions. So that's not, like, the effective rate would probably be closer to 45%. So, like, so many of the arguments against Bernie, against Justice Democrats, against the left, they just stem from a fundamental misunderstanding or a fundamental ignorance of what we're actually saying. Now, and by the way, it's not like Bernie would not be in favor of raising his taxes at all. His effective tax rate at the end of the day was 26%. That's him actively trying to pay every penny in taxes he could. So what he wants is to, yes, raise his bracket, but that's not even the most important part. The most important part is to make the income tax system more progressive. So right now, the top bracket, I think, kicks in at $400,000 a year. I'm pretty sure that's when the 35% top marginal tax bracket kicks in. Why not have another bracket for $1 million in income and above per year? Why not have another bracket for $5 million in income and above per year? Why not have another bracket for $10 million in income and above per year? Why not make it steeply more progressive? So in other words, why not keep the taxes for the middle class and the poor the same, or if anything, lower them? And then upper middle class, you keep it the same, or you can kick it up a little bit. And then have more brackets that progressively get higher and higher, because that's a wonderful way to make sure we offer people equal opportunity by taking that money and reinvesting it into equal opportunity for everybody through, universal health care and universal education and a jobs program and things of that nature. So, yes, everybody's in favor of redistribution of wealth to one extent or another. The question is, where do you draw the line? And how much should it be that, people at the top are paying in taxes? And what exactly should that be reinvested in at the bottom? But everybody believes in redistribution of wealth. Literally, the police department is funded by redistribution of wealth because it's funded by taxes. The infrastructure is funded by redistribution of wealth. Very few people, only a tiny, tiny fringe of the hardcore libertarians are in favor of, like, privatizing all of our infrastructure. So everybody's in favor of it. It's just, where do we draw the lines? And obviously, given the fact that, over half of Americans make $30,000 a year or less, and people at the top are getting fantastically wealthy off everybody else, like, yeah, it's time to make the system a hell of a lot more rational and reasonable and logical, and to actually provide people that equal opportunity. So Bernie Sanders would raise his own taxes. Now, would he be paying that top marginal rate of 70%? And by the way, we'll get to his Fox News town hall in a little bit, and they tried to grill him on that as if it's like some sort of a gotcha. And he's like, no, like, I never even said that. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez never even said that. Nobody said if you make, what did he make this year? Let's look again. $561,000. Nobody said if you make $561,000, the government comes and takes 70% of your money. No, that's for $10 million in income and above, and it's every dollar above the $10 million line. So no, the idea it's like, oh, well, you're going to pay 70% of that? Nobody ever said he should do that. So what the fuck? Like, again, it all stems from they strawman your position, and then they play gotcha-ism with that. Like, aha, you believe this. Now, are you going to hold that? Are you going to hold yourself to that? Well, no, I don't actually believe that. So no, why would I hold myself to that? That doesn't make any sense. Like, what do you make up our position, and then you grill us in accordance with the position you just made up for us. So Bernie Sanders would raise his own taxes. He wouldn't raise it all the way up to the 70% number because he's nowhere near when that bracket would kick in. And again, it's just a debate about where the lines are. And people on the right and the centrist Democrats try to pretend like the left is incredibly unreasonable, when in reality, what we're calling for is actually much more in line with the rest of the industrialized world, where they have more progressive tax brackets. They do a more intelligent version of redistribution of wealth, where you actually give people equal opportunity, and you can fund things like paid maternity leave and paid vacation time and universal health care and universal college and things like that. So there is no gotcha here. There is no gotcha. There is no like, aha, we got it. Bernie Sanders is a massive hypocrite. No, he's not a hypocrite at all. He's clear about what his beliefs are. He is willing to raise his own taxes. But even with that, it's not this caricature that you've made of it that he should somehow give like, why don't you give enough to make yourself poor? Because he never said that he's against all people being rich. What he's against is the rigging of the system by the top 1% and giant multinational corporations, where they rig the rules against average people and in favor of themselves. So, I mean, that's what he's against. It's to say, hey, I don't think Wall Street should have gotten that bailout. I don't think these people who bankrupted their companies and tanked the world economy should be getting bonuses. Hey, I think maybe if somebody's making $100 million a year, that's a little excessive. Those things are not the same thing as saying, I'm against all wealth, full stop. But there's this sloppy thinking that people do where they think that's like what's being said, and it's just not. In the confines of a social democratic system, which is what Bernie Sanders ultimately wants, that doesn't mean nobody can be rich. And if you think that that is what it means, man, are you a sucker and you've fallen for some insane propaganda, both from the far right and from centrist Democrats who have no real response to the likes of Bernie Sanders. So let me close out this segment by repeating that Russell Brand quote one more time, because it's so true. He says, when I was poor and I talked about income inequality, they called me bitter. Now that I'm rich and I talk about income inequality, they call me a hypocrite. It's almost like they just don't want me to talk about that. Yeah, what else can you say about it? If it came out that Bernie Sanders, well, in no scenario would they say he's not wealthy, because even if Jane made no money, even if he made no money on top of his salary as a senator, it'd still be $174,000 a year, which they would say, aha, that's a lot. Hypocrite. Well, no, let's say for argument's sake, somehow he said, I don't even want my salary or whatever. Crazy. But let's say he said that. And he was pulling in $40K a year, let's say. They would turn around and they would say, see, that's why he wants to raise the taxes on the rich. He's got no money. Ha 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 ha. So no matter what, they were going to do aha. No matter what, they were going to come up with something to say aha. No, Bernie Sanders is consistent. I'm not surprised by any of these numbers. I'm not offended by any of these numbers. Bernie Sanders did not rig the economy and screw over regular people. Bernie Sanders wants to unrig the economy. So all this nonsense is just noise. And by the way, now it's gone already, because there really is nothing there. Even though they tried to make it a thing like, what's in there? Even though they tried to do that so much, it ultimately fell flat, because everybody's real reaction in their heart of hearts was the same, which is, whatever.